Hello everyone and welcome to another Catholic Q&A session. Today I'm answering an email from Joe who writes, "Hello sir, thank you for making all these videos. Now I've watched them over Christmas and the one about evolution made me want to read Genesis. You said to email you if there were any questions, and I was wondering if there was a reason why everyone lived for such a really long time." Great question, Joe. I'm really glad you're enjoying the videos. For those of you who aren't aware, throughout Genesis, we're told the ages of various people. And practically all the time they're in their hundreds, with a quick example being Adam, who it was said was 130 when he had his son Seth, and 930 when he died. This naturally seems very odd, as the oldest woman we can actually verify the age of was a French lady called Jeanne Clément, who was only 122 years when she passed away. It's also clearly not something which was believed to be literal by the ancient Middle Eastern people or the people who wrote the Bible passages, as at the same time, passages like Psalm 90:10 say how the average age was only 70 to 80, if you live past childhood. The short answer here is that the numbers being used are not literal ages, but are instead being used as shorthand to tell us important information about different people. What we see here is in fact an ancient Middle Eastern oral history method for remembering vast quantities of information. Writing as a fairly universal skill is actually a very recent phenomenon. While going back millennia there are people who could read and write, this group was tiny compared with the rest of society. People weren't stupid though, and still had a deep interest in important skills in history. To pass these on then, oral history was key. Now this could be seen as an unreliable form of communication, but as evidence shows from Aboriginals, Native Americans, and Sub-Saharan tribes, when it is your only way of recording information, people go to great lengths to remember it well. One of the key ways that they did this in the Middle East was to assign special importance to certain numbers so that even the illiterate would very quickly understand what was being shared. Now, one of these used in the Bible that you probably recognise is the number 40. This was used to state that something took a long time and was much more efficient than remembering that one journey took 64 days, and the next 92, and the one after that 36. Now, if these timings were particularly important, they'd obviously be recorded more exactly. But if it was just referring to a long time, this number 40 stood in as a helpful stand-in. Well, going through all the meanings of each number would make this video just ungodly long. I will give a brief explanation as to why we have such crazy numbers as ages in the early biblical texts, and the answer has a lot to do with math and how we count. So in modern days, everything is largely based around tens or hundreds or thousands. We call this the decimal system, and as best that I understand, it comes from the fact that we have 10 fingers, and from a young age you learn to count on your fingers. And as a result, even the most complex equations sort of began here. Ancient Sumeria though, which was one of the first civilizations in the world over 5,000 years ago and situated in the same region as the ancient Hebrews, developed a different way for counting on your hand that allowed them to calculate much higher. To do this, they would count the segments on their 4 main fingers, which added up to 12, and then they would times that number by each of their 5 fingers. And in this way, they were able to count not to 10, but all the way up to 60 just on one hand. Interestingly, it is from this that we get 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 12 hours in a day. Just think of all the various ways we count time in multiples of 60. Now, with 60 as their base number, different multiples or cuts of 60 would over time come to represent different things in their culture. A couple I remember as being important culturally in the ancient Middle East I'll pop up now. This is then further complicated by numbers specifically symbolic to a religion, like how in the Jewish and later Christian faith, 7 equals God's perfection. Lastly, these numbers could then also be combined to give further details about a person's life. Let's take 120 as an example, because this is used in the Bible to give many figures like Moses' age at their death. So it's assumed that they chose this number to represent a perfect human life because 12 represents time. Think of 12 months. But it also represents the completeness of time because it represents all of those months together. This is then times by 10, which is often used to refer to something having all of its skill, because you have 10 fingers, and the idea was that if you were to lose some of these fingers, you would generally struggle to do your trade as well as you would with all of them. Ultimately, when we get crazy ages like Adam being 130 years old, what we have come across is an oral history memory technique that would allow the student or teacher to quickly recount all the important information about a character's life in the most efficient way possible. I hope this answers your question, Joe, and gives some deeper insight into the ancient world of the prehistoric scriptures. Let me know if I can be of any further help. God bless and have a lovely day.